Close the door, and don't ask why, the giant bride murmured, her eyes glistening with secrets too heavy to speak, while the rancher's heart pounded with fear and devotion. What truth waits behind that closed door, and will love be enough to face it? The wind howled low across the valley, dragging dust like a veil over the empty hills. Ronan Vale stood on his porch, hat tipped low, staring at the horizon where a storm had been threatening all afternoon but never came. His ranch, Vale Hollow, had been quiet too long, too still. Even the horses had gone silent, their breath rising like ghosts in the cooling air. That's when he saw her. A figure walking the long dirt road, alone. Her outline was strange against the dying sun, tall, too tall, her shadow stretching double across the ground, as if the light couldn't decide where she ended. She moved like someone who didn't feel the weight of distance, only the pull of destiny. By the time she reached the fence, the sky had turned the color of blood. She stopped, hands clasped before her, a heavy traveling cloak swallowing her form. When she spoke, her voice was deep and quiet, the kind that felt older than the land itself. "Mr. Vale," she said, "I believe I'm to be your wife." Ronan's hand froze on the latch. He had heard the letter might come some arrangement brokered through a distant cousin, some lonely woman from back east, but no one mentioned she would be this. Her veil trembled in the wind. Beneath it, her height was startling, yet there was grace in every motion, like a tall pine bending without breaking. He stepped aside slowly. "You best come in. The wind bites hard after sundown." She crossed the threshold, ducking under the doorframe. The floorboards creaked beneath her boots, not from weight but from presence. The air felt different with her in it, charged, alive, uneasy. He lit a lamp. Her veil caught the light for an instant, showing the faint outline of her face, soft, beautiful, yet marked by something he couldn't name. Then she said it, low and certain. "Close the door, Mr. Vale, and don't ask why." Her tone wasn't fearful. It was final. Ronan turned, the storm wind pressing against his back like a warning. He hesitated only a heartbeat before sliding the bolt shut. Outside, something scraped across the porch, a sound too heavy for an animal, too slow for the wind. The horses whinnied, restless in their stalls. Isolde lifted her head beneath the veil, listening. "It followed me here," she whispered. Ronan's heart began to pound. In that dim, flickering light, he didn't know if he was staring at his bride or at the beginning of his damnation. If you think a man can face down the darkness outside, wait until you see what he learns about the one standing right behind him. The storm broke at midnight. Ronan woke to the sound of rain hissing against the windows, sharp as whispers. The lamp still burned low in the corner, and across the room sat Isolde Grey, his bride, straight-backed in a wooden chair. She hadn't moved since he'd gone to bed. Her veil lay folded beside her now. Her face was pale as moonlight, high-boned and solemn, her eyes a soft silver gray that seemed to hold too much memory. "You don't sleep?" Ronan asked quietly, half ashamed to hear his voice tremble. She shook her head once. "Not on nights like this." "Why's that?" Her gaze drifted to the window, where lightning bled over the hills. "Because they remember me when it rains." He frowned, not understanding. She looked back at him then, the corner of her mouth curving in the faintest, saddest smile. "You'll hear them soon," she said. "But don't open the door, whatever happens." The wind howled through the chimney. Ronan rose, pulled on his coat and checked the latch out of habit. He told himself it was superstition. Frontier loneliness made people strange, but her calm, unblinking stare made him doubt his own logic. "Miss Grey." "Isolde," she corrected softly. "You should call me that, if I'm to stay." Her voice, steady, grounded, disarmed him. He nodded once. "Isolde, then." She rose, unfolding to her full height. Even barefoot, she was nearly eye level with the doorframe. Her presence filled the cabin, not like an intruder, but like something the space had been waiting for. Thunder rolled deep across the mesa. Then came the sound. At first, faint like boots dragging through mud. Then closer, heaviness on the porch boards, slow, deliberate. Ronan's hand went to his revolver. He shot her a look, but she only shook her head. "No," she said. "It's not a man." The steps stopped. The lamp flickered once, twice, then steadied. He could feel it, the weight of something unseen pressing against the wall, as if listening. The air grew colder. "Isolde," he whispered, "what followed you here?" Her eyes glistened. Something that doesn't forgive being left behind. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then, a knock. Soft, almost polite. 3 times. Ronan moved toward the door, but she caught his wrist strong, her fingers cold as iron. "Don't." He met her gaze and saw, for the first time, real fear trembling behind that calm. The knocking stopped. They stood together in the quiet, listening as the rain softened and the night exhaled. When she finally spoke, her voice was only a breath. "Tomorrow, I'll tell you what waits in the dark. But tonight, Mr. Vale, let's just keep the door closed." Ronan nodded slowly, though his pulse thundered like the storm itself. He didn't understand what haunted her, only that, whatever it was, it had found its way to his home. And somehow, so had she. By morning the storm had gone, leaving behind a sky washed pale and clean. The land around Vale Hollow shimmered with wet light, every fence post glistening like bone. Ronan stepped outside, with his rifle slung over his shoulder, his boots sinking into the soft earth. He didn't say it aloud, but he needed to know if there were prints, proof that something human had stood on his porch in the rain. There were none. The boards were clean, washed smooth by water and wind. Yet when he bent close, he saw it, thin streaks of ash clinging beneath the threshold, black as soot, forming a shape almost like a hand. Inside, Isolde was already awake, tending to the fire. The light touched her face gently, showing the fine scars that ran along her jaw, like cracks in porcelain. She moved carefully, every gesture deliberate, graceful, and silent. "You went out," she said without turning. "Had to check the fences," he lied. "You checked the porch first," she replied. Not accusation, just certainty. Ronan leaned the rifle by the door and sat down across from her. The cabin smelled of smoke and damp wool. He tried to find something ordinary to say, but words failed. She made even silence feel like confession. Finally he asked, "What happened to you before you came here?" Isolde paused, stirring the fire. "Something old," she said. "Something I tried to outgrow." He studied her hands, broad, strong, the kind used to carry more than their share. A woman made for a hard living, but her eyes gave her away. She'd seen too much for any lifetime. "I don't believe in ghosts," he muttered. She smiled faintly. "That's good, they believe in you." The air between them tensed, like a wire pulled too tight. Then came a sound, wood shifting. Ronan turned. The door, which he'd latched tight, creaked open a few inches on its own. Cold air slipped in, curling around his boots. He rose, pushed it shut, and slid the bolt harder this time. "The wind's stubborn," he said. Isolde didn't move. "No, it's remembering." He turned toward her, uneasy. Remembering what? The last place it was let in. He didn't ask again. Something in her tone, soft, steady, made him stop. The rest of the day passed quietly. Ronan worked the corral, repaired the fence, anything to push back the feeling that the house itself was watching. Each time he returned, the door was open a little wider. By sunset, he'd nailed it shut. When he came back inside, Isolde was standing at the window, her veil drawn again, as if bracing herself for nightfall. "Do you think a door can keep it out?" she asked. "I'll make damn sure of it," he said. She turned toward him, her voice low. "Then you'd best pray it doesn't want in." The lamp guttered once, as though something breathed too close. And when Ronan looked down, the floor beneath the door was clean, no ash, no prints. But for the first time, There were two shadows standing side by side. Only one of them moved. The next morning, it dawned red as rust. Ronan woke to the sound of splitting wood, steady, rhythmic, powerful. He stepped outside, half expecting one of his ranch hands, then remembered he had none left. Isolde stood by the chopping block. Her long sleeves rolled past her elbows. She swung the axe clean through a thick log that would have taken 2 men to crack. The blade sank deep with a single motion, the sound sharp in the cool air. Her movements were calm, almost reverent, as if the work soothed something restless inside her. Ronan watched for a long moment before speaking. "That's a day's worth of wood in 10 minutes. She didn't look up. "The body remembers the weight it was given," she said softly. He frowned. "Meaning?" She straightened, taller in the morning light than she had seemed the night before. For the first time, he saw her fully, no veil, no shadow hiding her height. She must have stood near 7 feet, shoulders broad, posture regal but somehow weary. Her eyes met his, unflinching. "Do I frighten you now that you can see me clearly?" Ronan hesitated. "No," he said, though his pulse betrayed him. "But I'd be a liar if I said I've met many like you." Her lips curved, neither smile nor smirk. "There aren't many left." She lifted another log, split it cleanly, then leaned on the axe handle, gaze far away. "My mother used to say we were made different for a reason, that the world once needed people who could stand against the wind itself." Ronan stepped closer. "And what happened to them?" "They forgot what they were standing for," she said. Then the storms came. He didn't know whether she spoke in riddles or memories, but there was grief in her words, heavy and ancient. When she turned away, he saw something that made his breath catch faint markings across the back of her neck, silver against her skin. Not scars, symbols, like brands burned long ago that never healed. "Who did that to you?" he asked. She met his gaze, and for the first time her voice shook. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me." She hesitated, then said quietly, "They weren't men." The wind picked up again, harder this time, scattering wood chips across the yard. The sky dimmed, clouds drawing fast from the east. Isolde dropped the axe, her eyes scanning the ridge. "They're near," she whispered. "I can feel them." Ronan grabbed his rifle and followed her gaze. But there was nothing, only the dark line of the mesas, the shifting mist. "What are they?" he asked. Her answer came like a prayer. "The ones who never stopped hunting the tall." Lightning flashed, distant but real. For a moment, the world around them seemed to hold its breath. Then, faintly, the door to the house creaked open on its own. Isolde turned toward it, voice low as thunder. "It's time you saw what waits when you refuse to close the door." By dusk, the clouds had gathered again, low and swollen, the air so thick it hummed. Ronan checked the fences twice, then 3 times. The horses refused their feed, eyes rolling white. Even the hound wouldn't go near the porch. Something unseen was drawing closer, and Isolde felt it in her bones. "They know where I am," she said. Her voice was a quiet tremor, not of fear but inevitability. Ronan stood beside her, rifle in hand, gaze fixed on the ridge. "Then we'll be ready for them." "You can't fight them," she murmured. "Not the way you think." "Then tell me what I'm facing." She didn't answer right away. The firelight from the window painted her face in gold and shadow. "They were born before towns had names," she said at last. "A line of men who hunted anything taller, stronger, or different. They believed God made the world small for their comfort, and anything larger was a sin." Ronan turned toward her. "You're saying they killed your kind?" "They tried." The first sound came before he could speak again, a long, low whistle from the ridge. Then another. Not human, but not animal either. Something between. Ronan lifted his rifle, eyes narrowing. "How many?" "Enough to test your courage," she said. The night fell fast after that. Shapes appeared against the darkening sky, tall shadows with lanterns that flickered blue instead of yellow. They moved in silence, gliding more than walking. Ronan's trigger finger tightened, but Isolde placed her hand on the barrel, pushing it down. "Don't fire, not unless they cross the gate." He swallowed hard, watching them gather at the fence line, their faces hidden under wide hats. The air turned colder, the light dimmed. One of them stepped forward, a man, or the ghost of one, his voice stretched and hollow. "Isolde Grey," he called. "You were promised back to us." Ronan's gut twisted. "Promised?" Isolde's expression didn't change. "They think I belong to them." The leader's lantern burned brighter, casting a blue light across the corral. "The world's made for men of measure. You were made wrong, girl. Give yourself over, and the earth'll stop shaking for you." Ronan stepped in front of her, rifle raised. "You talk like preachers, but you sound like grave robbers." The figure tilted his head, smiling without warmth. "You'll learn, rancher. Tall things fall hardest." The wind surged, rattling the nailed door behind them. Isolde's voice dropped low. "Inside," she said. "Now." They retreated into the cabin. The moment she crossed the threshold, she pressed her palm against the wall. The lamps flickered, and faint lines, those same silver symbols on her skin, glowed across the wood like veins of light. "What are you doing?" Ronan whispered. "Keeping the past from walking in." Outside, the figures moved closer, the blue light seeping through the cracks like breath. Ronan braced himself, heart hammering. If they want to fight, they found the wrong man. Isolde looked at him then, eyes shining with sorrow and something fierce. "No, Ronan, they found the right one." The cabin trembled as if something vast and unseen pressed against its walls. Ronan steadied himself near the hearth, rifle drawn, though he knew it was little comfort against whatever prowled beyond the door. Isolde stood in the center of the room, hands spread against the walls, whispering words that didn't belong to this land or any he'd heard. The air thickened. The lines glowing beneath her palms pulsed faintly, spreading through the wood like veins of molten silver. Outside, the voices called again. "You can't hide, Isolde Grey. The wind remembers your blood." Ronan's breath hitched. He moved closer to her, watching the faint light crawl up her arms, tracing patterns over her skin. Her eyes were half closed, face calm yet strained, as if holding back a flood. "What are you doing to my house?" he asked. Not out of anger, but awe. "Binding it," she said through gritted teeth. "If I let go, they'll come through every crack." He glanced at the door, the nails rattled in their sockets. "They're not men, are they?" She met his gaze, light flickering in her pupils. "No, not anymore. Once, they were hunters. Then they bound themselves to the dark they chased. Now they feed on what they fear." The floorboards creaked under invisible weight. A hand, pale and thin, bones sharp as twigs, pressed against the window from the outside. The glass frosted over instantly. Ronan raised his rifle, but Isolde's voice stopped him. "Bullets won't change what's already dead." "Then what will happen?" "Faith," she whispered, "and a little mercy." The lamp went out. The only light now came from her body, faint and steady. Her shadow stretched tall across the walls, taller than she was, reaching the ceiling beams. The air shimmered, and for an instant he saw her as something else, luminous, immense, not monstrous but magnificent. When she spoke again, her voice carried two tones, one human, one echoing like distant thunder. "They took everything from my kind, but they can't take the light unless I let them." The pounding on the door turned to scraping. The boards cracked. Ronan rushed forward to brace it, shoulder against the frame. "If you're gonna save us, now's the time." "I can't hold it alone," she said, straining. "The bond needs two hearts." He didn't understand, but he pressed his hand beside hers on the wall. A jolt ran through him, cold, electric. He saw flashes, tall figures in firelight, a ruined chapel, a woman kneeling beneath a storm, then nothing but silence. Outside, the voices screamed once and vanished. The wind dropped, the pressure lifted. When the lamplight steadied again, the cabin stood untouched. Only a faint line of silver remained, where his hand had met hers, glowing softly like an oath carved into wood. Isolde collapsed to her knees, trembling. Ronan caught her before she fell. "They're gone," he said. "For now," she murmured. "But you've tied yourself to me, Ronan Vale. Whatever hunts me now hunts you too." He looked at her, at the faint light fading beneath her skin, and knew there was no turning back. By the next morning, the storm had rolled east, but its silence lingered. Vale Hollow looked different, cleaner, calmer, as if the land itself exhaled after holding its breath all night. Yet under that stillness, unease festered. Ronan saddled his horse before dawn and rode into town. He needed supplies and distance from the strange quiet of the ranch, but every hoofbeat felt like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Ash Hollow was waking slowly. Smoke curled from the smithy, and the sound of a hammer echoed faintly. But when he tied his horse outside the general store, people stopped talking. Eyes followed him hard, cautious. He tipped his hat to Old Man Barlow, the storekeeper. "Mornin', Barlow." The old man nodded stiffly. "Heard tell you got a new bride." "That's right." Barlow shifted his weight, gaze flicking toward the ridge. "Funny thing, folks seen lights out your way last night. Blue ones. Heard voices too." Ronan kept his tone flat. "Wind plays tricks, same as rumor." Barlow leaned forward on the counter. "Some say the woman you married wasn't sent by the preacher. Say she just appeared." Ronan froze, the paper bag crinkling in his grip. "You calling me a liar?" "I'm saying Ash Hollow don't take kindly to strange things." Ronan didn't answer. He paid and left without another word. The whispers started before he reached the door. Giant bride, devil's woman, cursed blood. He rode home faster than he meant to. The sky was clear, but the air carried tension, a quiet dread that clung to his shoulders. When the ranch came into view, he saw Isolde standing in the yard, bareheaded in the Sunday. The light caught her hair white blonde, almost silver. Her skin looked translucent, and faint traces of the symbols still glimmered beneath it. She turned as he approached, eyes steady, already knowing what he'd heard. "They're talking," he said. "They would," she replied. "They always do when something doesn't fit their shape of the world." He dismounted, jaw tight. Barlow said, "They saw lights." Her lips parted in a sigh. "The ones who hunted me before they linger where I've been. The air remembers." Ronan stared at her, the truth pressing close now, heavy and unreal. "Then it's not over." "No," she said. "The bond you took on it calls to both sides. They know you helped me." He swallowed. "Then let them come." She shook her head. "You don't understand. Men fear what they can't kill. But the worst kind don't stop there. They preach against it." As if her words summoned it, a faint sound rose from the valley. Bells. The kind used by riders coming to town. Isolde's gaze hardened. "They're coming to judge you for loving something taller than they can see." Ronan stepped closer, his shadow touching hers. "Then they'll learn what I stand for." She looked up at him, eyes shining with sorrow and fierce affection. "And what will you tell them?" "That the woman they fear," he said, voice steady, "saved this land from the dark." The bells grew louder. And somewhere beyond the ridge, something old stirred again. By noon, the riders appeared on the horizon, 5 of them, hats low, dust rising behind like a slow-moving storm. The lead horse bore a white flag, but Ronan knew better than to mistake it for peace. He stood by the gate, rifle slung but not raised. Beside him, Isolde watched with her usual stillness, though her eyes were distant, as if seeing a memory replay itself. "They come dressed as men of law," she murmured, "but they bring no mercy." Ronan said nothing. He felt the air change the sound of the horses, the crack of hooves over dry ground. When the riders stopped before the fence, Sheriff Keaton dismounted first, boots crunching over gravel. He was a tall man, clean-shaven, the kind who spoke softly so others would lean closer to listen. "Afternoon, Vale," he said. "Heard some troubling talk about your new bride." Ronan kept his tone even. "The town's been restless since the rain. Folks need something to blame." Keaton's gaze flicked to Isolde, and for a moment his composure slipped. She stood taller than any of them, her presence calm but undeniable, the sunlight bending off her like glass. "She doesn't belong here," one deputy muttered. Ronan's jaw tensed. "She belongs where I say she does. She's my wife." Keaton took a slow step forward. "That may be. But the people of Ash Hollow are frightened. They say there were lights at your ranch, strange ones, voices on the wind. They think your bride brought something with her." Isolde's voice came steady, low. "They're not wrong." All eyes turned to her. She met them without flinching. "What followed me here was born of the same fear that fills your town. The hunters came again last night. If not for him," she nodded to Ronan, "this land would be ash." Keaton's hand drifted toward his pistol. "You expect me to believe that?" "No," she said softly. "You're not built to believe in anything taller than yourself." The deputy spat on the ground. "That's devil talk." Ronan stepped forward, rifle now raised but steady. "You'll holster that temper, son, or I'll teach you manners." Tension cracked the air. The riders shifted, hands near their guns. Keaton's gaze hardened. "You're choosing her over your own kind?" Ronan's answer came like iron. "My kind stopped being yours when you rode out here to measure her with a noose." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Keaton lowered his hand. "You're making a mistake, Vale. When the next storm comes, don't expect us to help." "I won't," Ronan said. They turned and rode off, the sound of hooves fading across the plain. When the last echo died, Isolde exhaled, shoulders trembling. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "Now their fear will turn to hunger." Ronan set the rifle aside and faced her fully. "Let them come. I've been alone too long to bow to ghosts, living or dead." But as he said it, a wind rose from the west, carrying a low sound like laughter. Isolde's eyes darkened. Then the hunt begins again. The wind returned at dusk, cold and coiled with electricity. Ronan could taste the storm before he saw it, metallic and bitter, like something alive. The sky above Vale Hollow twisted black, and thunder rumbled so deep it shook the floorboards beneath his boots. Isolde stood by the window, her silver hair loose, eyes reflecting each flash of lightning. "They're not waiting this time," she said quietly. "The hunters come with the storm. They've learned the scent of your courage." Ronan loaded his rifle, though he knew the weapon would be useless. "Then they'll choke on it." He moved through the house, shuttering windows, sealing cracks, but the air itself pressed in heavy and thick. When he passed the hearth, the fire flared blue, for an instant unnatural, eerie, and the symbols etched along the wall from their bond began to glow once more. "They're close," Isolde whispered. "The sky remembers their shape." A knock sounded 3 times, just as before. Only this time, the door didn't rattle. It breathed. The wood expanded, as if something on the other side was inhaling the house itself. Ronan gritted his teeth, stepping between Isolde and the door. "You said faith and mercy," he growled. "Tell me how." Her voice trembled. "Mercy isn't surrender, it's knowing when to stand without hatred. They want us to be afraid, Ronan. Don't give them that." He turned to her. "And faith?" "Faith is closing the door again, even when you know it won't hold." The walls groaned. The first of them appeared at the window, pale shapes in the rain, their faces hollow and long, their eyes burning blue. The air hissed with whispers, the same words looping over and over. "Give her back. Give her back." Isolde raised her hands, palms shining. The light beneath her skin brightened until the whole cabin shimmered like a lantern. The hunters recoiled, hissing, their forms blurring in the downpour. Ronan grabbed her arm, voice sharp. "It's killing you," She smiled faintly. It's freeing you. No, he said, pulling her closer. You're not doing this alone again. He placed his palm over hers against the wall, just as before. The glow spread through them both, fierce and burning. Outside, lightning struck the fence line, igniting it in a ring of fire. The hunters screamed, their shapes distorting, collapsing into ash. The wind howled through the flames, carrying with it the last of their words. She was never meant to stay. The roof beams cracked, fire spreading fast. Isolde turned to him, light bleeding from her eyes now. It's done, Ronan. But the bond, if you stay, it will take you too. He cupped her face, the heat blistering around them. Then let it. I made my vow when I closed that door. The fire roared louder, swallowing the house. For an instant, the flames bent outward, not consuming but surrounding them like a halo. And in that terrible light, her body dissolved, tall, luminous, and then gone, leaving only a whisper. Love is the only door worth closing. Ronan fell to his knees as the storm broke above him, the rain dousing the fire, but not the ache left behind. The ranch still stood, but he knew something eternal had left it. Dawn broke over Vale Hollow like a promise that had taken too long to keep. The storm was gone. The ground still smoked from the night before, faint trails of ash curling from the fence posts where lightning had split them in half. The ranch was quiet, too quiet, but the kind that follows peace, not destruction. Ronan stepped out from what remained of the cabin. The air was cool and sharp, heavy with the scent of wet cedar and burnt earth. In the yard, where the hunters' ashes had blown away, the soil shimmered faintly silver in the morning light. It pulsed, slow and steady, like a heartbeat beneath the land. He stood there for a long time, hat in hand, not sure whether to grieve or give thanks. The house still bore the mark where Isolde's light had burned through the wall. A single handprint, shining faintly, alive even now. He knelt beside it, brushing the dirt from his palm before pressing it against hers. The faint warmth surprised him. You kept your word, he whispered. Guess I have to keep mine. From the field came the soft nicker of horses. They'd return during the night, calm and unafraid. Even the old hound lay sleeping on the porch again, as though the world had been reset, scrubbed clean of dread. Ronan rebuilt in silence over the following days. He mended the roof, replaced the door that had refused to stay shut, and left one wall untouched, the one bearing her mark. When the sun struck it just right, the light danced across the boards like flame, and for a heartbeat, he could almost see her standing there again, tall and radiant, smiling at him. The town came calling a week later. Sheriff Keaton rode up, hat in hand, trying not to look ashamed. Heard the storm hit hard out here, he said. Ronan leaned on the fence. The storm's gone. Everything's fine. Keaton nodded, uneasy. Folks say they saw light from the ridge, thought it was fire. Ronan's gaze drifted to the horizon. Maybe it was. Maybe something needed burning. The sheriff tipped his hat and left without pressing further. The people of Ash Hollow never spoke her name again, though sometimes, when the wind carried through the canyons, they swore it sounded like a woman singing. That night, Ronan lit the lamp by her handprint and sat by the door. He kept it open, just a crack, the way she'd once asked him not to. And in that silence, he heard it a low hum, the same note she'd used to steady the night. The air moved through the room, soft and sure, brushing his cheek like a blessing. He smiled then, not with grief but with understanding. The promise had never been about keeping doors shut. It had been about knowing when to open them. Ronan closed his eyes and whispered into the quiet. Rest easy, Isolde. The door's open now. Outside, the wind rose, warm and gentle. And for the first time in Vale Hollow's long, haunted history, it carried only peace. If you thought love couldn't survive the dark, wait until you see what waits behind the next door that should have never been opened.